Our guest tonight, which we are honored to have on, is Shawn Kevin Jason. Shawn is a former MUFON field investigator and director of special projects. He's been researching UFO phenomena for over 20 years. As a contributing writer for Colorado MUFON Journal, he's a researcher and experiencer. He's also had his own UFO encounter story published in Kim Carlsberg's latest book, The Art of Close Encounters. Shawn is going to brings a wealth of knowledge and experience to the table. Without any further delay, let's bring Shawn on. Shawn, good evening and welcome to K-Talk and the Fringe Radio Show.
Thank you, Pat. How are you?
I am doing good. How are you?
Not too bad. Just waiting for Friday.
Yeah, well, it's Friday already, depending where you're at, but it's been kind of a long week already.
Indeed, it has been.
So I did not put any notes or anything down. I'm going to kind of freeform this one. I found you through just doing some searches on the internet, and actually a friend of mine had dropped your name on my desk a while ago, and again, I am honored, and I want to thank you for giving up your morning to be here. Why don't you tell me about yourself and how you got into UFOs and MUFON and just kind of hear your story?
Well, I know you touched up on a little bit of it in the bio, but essentially I've had a lifetime full of paranormal experiences, which kind of just took me down this path. Eventually it led into UFO encounters, UFO sightings, but it's kind of covered everything from missing time to poltergeists, psychic encounters or experiences, angelic encounters, werewolf encounters. It's just been a slew of all kinds of paranormal things going on.
So did that push you, with getting into that, obviously you took part of MUFON and became a field investigator, and it's as director of special projects. Obviously, you had to have a pretty strong event, or just had been a strong passion to move into that field, especially with MUFON. I know that to become a field investigator or an area director, that's one thing I found quite interesting. Is it's not it's almost a full-time job in itself.
It most certainly was at the time. Really, my interest began in UFOs around the age of 11, when I had come across a box of books and magazines that used to belong to my father from his childhood. Most of the books were dealing with things like ghosts, Bermuda Triangle, UFOs, flying saucers. And I was at that impressionable age where I was just starting to read, well, not learning to read, but reading real books. And those were some of the first books I decided to read, and they left an impression on me that lasted for quite some time until probably in the early 90s when I got re-interested in the subject and began picking up more books on it and really got into it. When I got interested in MUFON and got involved in that, I was at the time when John Schuessler had taken over from Walt back in Denver, Colorado, and I did a lot of volunteer work under John and helped out with the organization with what I could, became an investigator, did the whole 9 yards. But as you were saying, I did have some personal experiences, sightings that just led me in that direction.
So, in you were in Kim's book. What actually happened? I haven't had an opportunity to. Matter of fact, we've been trying to get Kim on the show. I haven't had an opportunity to go through her book. But what event took place that her book covers?
No, essentially that book was basically a collection of different people who've had various experiences, and they contributed a story along with a piece of artwork to it. In my case, it was a piece of artwork recreating my encounter with a black triangle and a story to go along with it. But pretty much everyone had either real-life experience stories in it, or it didn't have to be a real life story. It could have been just a story in itself, but it was all dealt with aliens, UFOs type of deal.
Gotcha. So, have you ever had an encounter yourself, or what you could maybe term an abduction or contact, or is it more of just some personal sightings?
Well, in the case of, I've had a number of UFO sightings, and my most impressionable one on me was with the black triangle when I was on my way to Area 51. The UFO or the triangle happened to be hovering about 20 feet over the highway. So it wasn't something you could miss. You had to drive right under it to where you're going. Now, what made the encounter unusual was that I had a precognition or a psychic experience like an hour prior to tell me where I needed to be, when I needed to be there in order for that encounter to happen. So it kind of led up to that event, and then the event took place, and of course I got to see this UFO up close and personal for like the duration of 10 minutes. The strangest thing, of course, is from my perspective, the UFO wasn't alien at all, but it was man-made.
Really? So do you think it was of this world or not of this world?
I think it was definitely of this world. As I pointed out in my story in Kim Carlsberg's book, is that the UFO had incandescent light bulbs, 9 of them on the underside of the craft, which essentially looked like floodlights. The front face of it had a glass face, perfectly see-through, with some kind of etched pattern that, diffused light. On the inside, it had a cone with a silver or mirror finish, a typical light bulb. These were larger-sized light bulbs, kind of like your standard, maybe a little larger than even your backyard, say, floodlights that some people may use. The center was using a filament, a coil, to produce the light, and it was your standard light bulb.
Wow. Do you, one thing that I continue to hear quite a bit, Shawn, is people talk about. I've heard this from more and more researchers and people that kind of dig into encounters. And when I say encounter, I don't necessarily mean, and I'm sure you agree with this. You don't have to necessarily. You're not an abductee, maybe not even a contactee. But a lot of researchers are starting to come forward and say they feel that there is some sort of a, let's call it ESP, or some sort of a psychic connection. Maybe that's not the right word to use, but maybe we'll call it a telepathic connection with some of these crafts, where they feel that they're controlled telepathically or psychically or through ESP. Do you think with the black triangle, do you think it's, while you say it was of this world, do you believe that, or do you possibly think that its design or construction maybe came from out of this world technology?
Well, when I think of the psychic connection, at least as far as my situation goes, I understand from my research that other contactees, abductees usually experience some type of psychic experience in conjunction with their encounter. In my case, it was an ability I've always had, at least since my early childhood or my teenage years. And I feel more like it was I used that ability to, say, intercept a man-made UFO or create that situation for that encounter to happen versus other situations where they typically explain it as, it was being piloted by aliens. They sent me the signal, hey, we want to meet you out at this location this time, be there kind of deal. I don't feel like my situation was kind of like that. It was more like I desired it to happen, and thus, through my gift, I produced the event type of deal.
Wow. So you maybe in some way kind of summons this thing?
Possibly in some way. I suppose you can look at it like that. I've had a number of psychic experiences like that, and just a UFO encounter was one of them. I've had some that involved my daughter, some that involved my friends. It pops up in different ways. It's not always a UFO encounter, but it's always been 100% true and accurate, so it's not something I can do anything about or change.
Right. It's something, and is this, if you had this ability or gift or circumstance since a very young age?
Yeah, it started about the age of, I was probably about 13 years old. At the time, I was living in Las Vegas. I came from somewhat of a troubled home, so I was growing up on the streets a lot rather than at home where I had trouble at school. So that just kind of added to some of the issues I was dealing with. So I was going through a lot of trouble on the streets, living that type of lifestyle in Las Vegas, no less at the time. And the way the gift manifested itself at that time was I had a weird knack for detecting the presence of police or cops before you could actually see them or know they were there, and it earned me the nickname Radar from my friends, jokingly. But that's how it started out. You're running on the streets. Of course, you don't want to get busted by the cops, or you're out after curfew. You don't want to get busted. So that's how the ability first manifested itself. Was my friends would jokingly call me Radar because I can sense the presence of police officers before they arrived. So it kind of kept us out of trouble and saved our necks a few times. And after that, it kind of manifested itself in other ways. Of course, one of them was the UFO encounter, but even as something as simple as protecting my daughter later on in life.
Very interesting. Do you think that possibly I don't want to say paranormal, but when a lot of people, I think when you talk about psychic abilities, to some degree, paranormal does come up. I believe psychics. Like last night we had on June DeYoung. She's had 6 near-death experiences in her life, and her ability started about 30-some years ago. And she, her gift or her abilities kind of come and go. She gets a lot of her information through her dreams. She sees these very, 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 very vivid dreams, and sometimes even gets somewhat of a timeline. And from all her experiences and through her research on herself, on things that have happened, she can almost get the events time. She can actually put time to them. So she'll have a dream or whatever, or whatever you want to call it, a viewing in her dreams is where she seems to get things the strongest, and is able to actually derive a timeline, and her timeline is pretty accurate, usually within a day or so. Do you think that even again when you think about UFOs and the paranormal and psychic abilities, do you think all of that is kind of tied together through maybe other dimensions or other timelines? I mean, do you think it's all interconnected?
Well, that's a good question. That's some of the things I've been trying to figure out based on my own experiences, especially when you start talking about dreams, other timelines, what exactly reality is. When you were talking about the other guests who had these dreams, who was getting these messages, now I can understand that, because an example, my werewolf encounters or my angel encounter all happen in a dream state. But dream is almost the wrong word. It's almost like a bad word because it really doesn't even begin to describe what the experience is like. Typically a dream is fuzzy. Your self-awareness, there is no self-awareness. You're pretty much along for the ride. And a dream is like you're watching a movie, really. And even though you may have a part in the movie, you're not even aware you have a part in the movie. It's just a play, and if you're lucky, you even remember you had a dream. Typically, most people wake up and they just draw a blank, like they didn't dream at all, although everyone does. And then dreams have to do with different levels of awareness. You typically have your just fuzzy dream, and then you have, say, something like lucid dreaming, where at some point in a dream you recall that you are in fact asleep. This dream is just a dream. It's not real, and the dream is happening within you and not you're a part of the dream. So that's kind of lucid dreaming, but it's got that whole fuzzy feel. You don't have full control over it. And then at the level of where I experienced this angelic encounter and these werewolf encounters was on something called a false awakening. Now, it's kind of like the opposite of sleepwalking, where when a person sleepwalks, they their body is fully awake. They can drive down to the store, they can go to the kitchen, they can watch TV, and yet no one's home upstairs. You know, the lights are off. Whereas with a false awakening, it's like you fully woke up into reality. You have oneness, full consciousness. The only problem is your body forgot to wake up. So you're still asleep in bed, and yet you're fully awake, you're fully aware, and your mind has to substitute that by recreating the reality you live and know every day. So a false awakening might be where you thought you woke up, you know, you're getting ready for work, you're taking your shower, you're cooking breakfast, you go to work, you go through your regular mundane chores, and yet at some point something strikes you as being weird or different about reality, that you think you're seeing things, when in fact you've actually been asleep the whole time. There's been a number of different people who've had different stories to tell as far as that goes. And say in my werewolf encounter, I was at the age of 7, and it was late one night, early in the morning. I wake up, and I immediately assumed the fetal position, and it was kind of like a reflex, just wake up straight to the fetal position, scared to death. You just had a nightmare, but you draw a blank. You don't remember anything. So I'm sitting there in this position in bed, and I'm freaking out, like, why did I wake up? What type of bad dream did I have? I get over it, and I decide, you know, I'm thirsty. I'm going to go to the bathroom, get a drink of water. The house is quiet. I realize everyone must be asleep. I peek under my bed. You know, I share a room with my brother. I'm on the top bunk. I look below, and, you know, he, of course, is sound asleep. Eventually, I venture down the ladder, get off the bed. Everything is perfectly normal. It's perfectly real. It's just a typical night where I woke up from a nightmare and wanted to get a drink of water, or so I thought. I start crossing the bedroom, going towards the bedroom door to leave the room, and I felt this presence in the room. And it just freaked me out, and I looked over my shoulder, and I see these lights outside the bedroom window, or what I thought were lights. There are 2 red lights, probably about eye level of the grown adults. And they were slowly approaching my window or the house, and I'm just trying to figure out what these lights are. And it begins to take shape as it gets closer to the window until eventually it's basically a foot away from my window, and I realize they're not lights, they're eyeballs. They're almond-shaped, red, blood red, glowing eyeballs, and they're looking in my room. And we had the back porch light on, and it was casting a silhouette of the creature into the bedroom. And the silhouette of a creature was that of a werewolf, you know, a tall, full-sized man, hairy, hunched over, snout, sharp teeth, and these large almond-shaped blood-red eyes just staring at me, or at least I thought it was staring at me. At this point, I'm frozen in complete terror. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't scream. I couldn't move. I couldn't do anything, but my eyes were just glued on this creature. And it was looking through the curtains as if it could see everything perfectly fine. But eventually it kind of just seemed like it was losing interest and walked away. And I let out a sigh of relief, like, oh, you know, thank God this thing didn't see me. I can run to my parents' bedroom and let them know there's something in our backyard, you know, go do something about it. And about the time I let out the sigh of relief, I hear this large crashing noise as the creature enters the bedroom. And I'm just beyond myself at that point. I'm totally freaking out. This thing is just a few feet away from me. It's slowly walking towards me. And I can feel its presence. I can feel its breath. It was just a horrifying sight. And it walked all the way up until we were basically face to face with one another, and it tilted his head and has opened his mouth and basically stuck my head into its mouth. And then suddenly I wake up in the exact same position. I wake up into a fetal position in my bunk bed in the same conditions the room was in the dream, and I'm just freaking out at this point, like, what the world just happened? Was it real? Is it real right now? Am I really awake? Have I just woken up into another whatever that was? I didn't know what to do at that point. I just kind of freaked out and cried myself back to sleep. And that was more or less my first experience or encounter with whatever this was. And this was a false awakening type of dream where, like reality is right now, listening to this show, you have no question that this is real, this is happening right now, you're listening to this show. But when you have a dream that's real, that you can remember every thought, every millisecond, every second of your dream, there's no question that there's some level of reality to it.
Sure. I'm 50 years old, Shawn, and that scares the hell out of me. Just you talking about that, especially the dreams that we have. That I know people dream about all kinds of different things. Whether they're falling. For me, the thing that I think is the scariest is being just petrified to where you can't move, where you're physically not able to move. Has this been it's hard to define it as a nightmare, because obviously while this was going on, you could, in some way, shape, or form, I assume time was moving, you could tell that time was moving forward. Like you said, a person's normal dream is something where, like you said, you don't even know it's a dream. You're just in there, things aren't quite right, and if you're lucky, you do remember it in the morning. But when you're in the state that you were in or have been in, obviously you're everything is getting played second by second and minute by minute in real time.
Exactly. It's not like a dream at all. It's more like you woke up into another dimension and you're experiencing reality from another dimension rather than this one. And it doesn't have the feel of a dream at all. So when you experience something like that in a false awakening, it's as real gets. And you're just absolutely dumbfounded at that point, because you're wondering how something like that possibly happens in reality when you're not even aware that you're still lying in bed, but it's perfectly real.
Have you had the werewolf dreams several times?
I've only had 3 waking dreams. The first 2 were the same werewolf, and then the third one I met an angel. The second one, I was probably about the age of 12 when I met the werewolf again. At that time, I was living in West Germany, in Bavaria. And we had a 3-story house with a basement. And it was, again, late at night. I woke up from bed in the fetal position, almost like a reflex, just immediately assume that position, as if you just woke up from an awful nightmare. And again, I was thirsty, wanted to get a drink of water, sat there for a while, collected my thoughts, collected myself, climbed out of bed, checked on my brother, left the bedroom. It was perfect reality. You're experiencing every second, every minute. Nothing seems abnormal. You just woke up from a bad dream, really. And I go downstairs. In Germans' homes, everything was kind of closed off, so you just had a staircase with all the bedrooms closed off, all the living room, everything closed off. So I'm coming down the staircase to the main floor, and I see the living room lights is on, and assumed my father must have been watching TV, fell asleep on a couch, and I'm making my way across the hallway to the kitchen. And again, I start feeling this presence, like there's something in the room with me. And I look over my shoulder, and I see this red glow casting on the walls from the basement. And immediately I was just consumed with fear as I watched that same creature begin walking up the stairs from the basement. And I knew it was coming for me, and it just slowly crept up the stairs until, again, we were pretty much face to face, and it opened its jaws and then stuck my head inside its mouth, and that's when everything turned black and I woke up.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Have you ever have you talked with anybody? Have you ever tried to do some some hypnosis or some regression techniques to try to maybe find more pieces to the puzzle around this?
Actually, back in, it was probably 2002, 2001, I used to work with Deborah Lindemann, I believe it was, and her husband Michael, who's written a few books on UFOs. But she also does hypnotherapy. She did an abduction support group, which I used to attend. So I did do a little bit of work with it. When I was working with her, we were trying to work on some anger issues I had over the whole Black Triangle encounter I experienced. And we never really got past that, although, by this day and age, I eventually worked out those issues that I had with the whole sighting. But that was something we never got past. So we never got into, what happened, whether or not these were screen memories I was experiencing, whether they were real, whether they were just dreams. It's still a guess at this point, although I still feel there was some level of reality to it.
Well, especially when you can, like I said before, when you have that sense of real time going on, I think that's where it takes it to a whole different realm. Because it seems in most dreams that I think a lot of us, and I'm no expert in it, but to me it seems like dreams in general move at a pretty fast forward speed. Things happen, but at least for myself, the dreams that I can remember, they kind of jump all over the place, and they happen pretty quickly. Of course, I think a lot of us go into the deep REM sleep in the early, usually before we wake, is where the most vivid dreams are. But there's never no timeline to it. I mean, it's hard to slow the timeline down to slow the dream down to real time, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yes, exactly. And I share the same as far as dreams go. It's always there's no real timeline. You're all over the place in these dreams, these type of false awakenings, which ironically, of my childhood memories, these false awakenings I remember better than my own childhood memories. They were that type of vivid. That intense. Yeah.
Yeah, that's...
Now, another odd experience around the first time I encountered the werewolf, when I was around 7, was a tree we lost in our backyard, which happened roughly around the same time. Now, when I encountered this werewolf, when it approached the house from the backyard, it did so in a direction and from a location that perfectly lined up with this tree we had lost, which we had no explanation for. It was simply one of those things where I woke up in the morning and the room was really dark, and I thought first thing was, there must be a storm. We're going to have rain for today. And I go look out the window, and I can't see anything because there's a bunch of bush and tree just basically covering the entire window. And
hey, Shawn, can I interrupt you just for a second? We've got to take just a quick commercial break to help pay the light bill, and we'll come right back. Our guest tonight, we're honored to have him here, is Shawn Kevin Jason. He's a former MUFON field investigator and director of special projects. Again, we're honored to have him here, and he's sharing his stories with us. We'll be back with him in just a few minutes. KTKK AM 630 in Salt Lake City, and we're live on the Inception Radio Network. We'll be right back with Shawn. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Fringe Radio Show. Our guest tonight is Shawn Kevin Jason. He is a former MUFON field investigator and director of special projects. Shawn, again, we're honored to have you on the show, and I appreciate you sharing your story with us. Would you like to pick up again? You were talking a little bit about this tree that had died or was gone in your backyard.
Well, it was kind of the story itself was we never actually found a reason for why this tree fell. It was just one of those things where it was a perfectly healthy tree. It wasn't hit by lightning. It wasn't chopped down. There was no sign of any obvious reason, termites, anything like that, for this tree falling, other than it simply snapped at its base and was just lying in our backyard for no particular reason. And it happened around the same time as that first werewolf encounter. I've always kind of associated the two events together, even though I can't say they are directly linked or have anything to do with each other. But I always found that this mysterious tree falling as curious at that time.
So, was this werewolf around this tree?
It originated when I first saw it. It was around the location of that tree, and the path it took to my window was basically the same path that the tree had fallen.
Gotcha.
Another interesting thing, which I found many years later, was apparently there was a number of werewolf sightings in Pennsylvania with the same type of eyes, glowing blood red eyes, almond shape, and they were seen in the Pennsylvania area, typically around UFOs during the 70s, which my encounter took place probably around 79, 80. Whether or not, again, they're related or the same thing, I don't know or couldn't say without, getting into hypnotherapy or anything like that.
Right.
But I always thought that was a curious fact or coincidence.
Yeah, or correlation. Huh, very, very interesting. With your black triangle craft. Well, let's back up a little bit. So, with the animal, with the creature, the werewolf dream encounter, you've had this happen 3 times in your lifetime?
Yeah, the first 2, of course, was with the werewolf. The second time it happened, I decided to fight back. Because that thing just really, the level at which it occurs, the reality that it feels like was just something I couldn't do again. So I was really into art at the time. I decided to draw a full-life replica of this werewolf and hang it on my bedroom door. And that was my way of facing my fears. Every time I go to bed, I get to stare at this thing. Every time I wake up, I get to stare at this thing. And every time I wake up from a bad dream in the middle of the night, there would be times I would see it and freak out for just a moment and then realize, it's not real. It's just a drawing, something like that. I could tell myself and convince myself it doesn't exist or it's not real. And I did that for probably a good while after I had that second encounter, just to get past that.
Did most of these take place in your childhood?
Yeah, the second one was when I was 12 years old. Now, the third one, the third false awakening, where I met an angel, happened when I was 15 and was living in Las Vegas at the time. And that was when I was going through a lot of trouble on the street, and my ability first developed as far as seeing future events in my life before they happened. Growing up on the streets, I went through, a lot of trouble, a lot of problems, and I realized I wasn't really hurting anyone but myself. I needed to turn my life around, pick myself up, and do something with my life. And eventually I did do that, and I turned my whole life around and essentially became a new person. It was shortly after that that I had this angel encounter, which was the same manner in which I met the werewolves, but it was a little bit different this time. I had came home from school, was tired, and decided to take a nap. It was probably like 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Eventually I woke up, immediately assumed a fetal position, just like those other dreams. But this time, there was an angel standing in the hallway directly in front of me. My bedroom door was open, the hallway light was on, and it was pitch black outside, so I figured I must have slept for a while. This angel's just standing there, not saying anything. She's wearing all white. She's glowing. She has this white glow all around her, blonde hair, very curly and long. She was probably the most beautiful woman I have ever seen ever. Right? She was like the definition of perfection. She just, no blemish out of place, perfect skin texture, tone, color. It was just beautiful. And she didn't talk to me like we do. She communicated with me telepathically. I could feel her love. I could feel her heart. She was sending me waves of love, and she was telling me basically she was proud of me. She was telling me she understood everything I went through, everything I experienced to turn my life around, and she was proud of that fact. Because at that time, no one was aware what I had gone through. No one knew what I was dealing with. It was something I just decided to do on my own and fight on my own and pull myself up by my own shirt collar. This was kind of like maybe it was a guardian angel, I don't know, but I got that real sensation of she was really loving and proud of me. And immediately after that, I woke up into a fetal position. The hallway light was on. My bedroom door was open. It was pitch black outside. Now, of course, when I went to bed, there was no hallway light on. I had closed my bedroom door, and it was 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I had no idea I was going to sleep that long. But that's kind of how the third one played out with the angel.
That's amazing. Did you feel after you went through that? Did you feel some sense of relief?
Actually, the moment I woke up and what we call this reality, I still felt her, even though I couldn't see her anymore. I still kind of felt that she was still standing there and was still sending me that energy.
Yeah, that's a great. I don't want to say a story because you experienced it, but I mean that's a great experience. Do you think, Shawn, that you talk about? We don't need to go into any of that, but you said you went through some as a lot of kids do, went through some rough times. Do you feel that? And I'm going to kind of just maybe go a little all over the place on this one, but I don't know. I want to. Through researchers that I've talked to and things that I've read, I don't want to say that your encounters with the werewolf are alien in nature or any sort of abduction, but whatever they may be, do you feel that sometimes? Do you feel that if you're a little down and out and you're a little vulnerable, that there are things out there that can get to us, meaning that if there's a little instability in our lives or if there's some trouble in our lives where, our guard is down a little bit because we're dealing with day-to-day, real-time human things, do you feel at all that people can be susceptible to things happening to them? When they let their guard drop a little bit, if there is something truly out there that it has the opportunity to kind of take advantage of a bad situation or a not so great situation?
I would imagine pretty much anything is possible. I've been in situations where I can say maybe something was probably playing some type of influence, but I'm sure if there's something out there that can certainly influence us, and we wouldn't be any wiser. Say, for instance, in my missing time situation, which is an odd story compared to most missing time stories. This was, I don't know if you recall the movie Dinosaur from Walt Disney.
Yes.
Well, my oldest son was really big into reptiles and dinosaurs and all that type of thing when he was younger. So when Dinosaur came out, naturally, that was like the one movie he absolutely wanted to see. We didn't go see it when it first came out, tried to avoid the crowds, wait a few weekends. Eventually, we decided on a Sunday morning go catch a matinee. There was a 11:15 showing. I figured I'd take him to that, so we head out of the house at a quarter to 11, 10:45. And the drive was maybe a 15-minute drive. It really wasn't that far, especially on a Sunday morning with no traffic. Well, once I got in the car with my two boys and we left, I was overcome with the strong sensation that I was not allowed to look at any timepiece. And my car had a built-in clock in the dashboard, and of course I had the phone with time on it. There were a number of ways I could have checked to see what time it was, but it was as if something was controlling me or applying some type of pressure that you're not going to look at any type of timepiece, period, until you get to the movie theater. And I felt really bizarre, really out of place. I've never felt anything like that before or since. And it just didn't make any sense to me. So we're driving to the movie theater. The whole time I'm feeling pressured not to look at any timepiece. I missed my turn for the movie theater, which was no big deal. We just went to the next exit, flipped around real quick, got back on the freeway. Maybe added just a few more minutes to my drive, got to the movie theater. And the drive really felt like 15 minutes. It really didn't feel like it took that long to get there. We walked up to the cashier, and of course I asked for, one adult, 2 kids tickets to go see Dinosaur at the 11:15 showing. And she gave me the absolute strangest look I've probably gotten from any cashier, and she didn't say anything. I'm like, okay, what did I say that was so wrong? So I asked her again, I would like 1 adult, 2 kids tickets for 11:15 showing. She's like, sir, that show started over an hour ago. If you hurry, you can catch the 12:15 showing, which started like 5 minutes ago. And I'm like, what are you talking about? She's like, it's like 12:20. I'm like, what do you mean it's 12:20? And I looked at the clock on the wall behind her, and sure enough, it was 12:20. And I drove all that way to go take my sons to see the movie, and one way or another, we were going to see it. And I bought tickets, and we went inside, even though at that point I was kind of freaking out because I couldn't explain what just happened. I had no idea why it took me an hour and a half to get to the movie theater for what was only a 15-minute drive. We get in the theater, sit down, and my oldest, the one who was just absolutely dying to see this movie, would not stop crying. It was just nonstop. He was wailing at the top of his lungs. And I couldn't get him to calm down, so fed up with what just happened and trying to get my son to calm down, we just left and we went home. And I get home, and then the wife was like, well, how was the movie? Did you guys like it? And I'm like, well, we never got to see it. And she's like, what do you mean? And I was like, well, we just got there like 15 minutes ago. She's like, what have you been doing all this time? And, of course, I explained the story to her, and we were just both simply dumbfounded as to what happened.
Did anything come to mind? Or was it just, again, a period of missing time? And obviously your kids were there with you at the same time, too.
Yeah, and I had both my boys with me, but it was just a period of missing time with no explanation as to what happened to it. She told us we were gone more than enough time to see a movie and do everything else we needed to, yet from our perspective, it felt like we just drove there and drove straight back home.
Wow. That's, and how long ago was that, Shawn?
It was right after the movie Dinosaur came out, and I can't remember exactly what year that was, but I would say it was probably like around 2003, 2002.
So not that long ago then.
Yeah, no, it wasn't that long ago, maybe 10 years ago.
Wow. That's, you've had a lot of interesting things happen.
Yeah, you can say that. The list certainly goes on, and I've barely touched on some of them. Of course, when I get into, say, my precognition experiences, where I've seen the future or different events, things that have happened, there's a number of stories there, or even in our, we lived in a haunted house for a year and went through type of a poltergeist situation there.
Well, can we keep you? I've got to take an NBC News break in about 30 seconds. Can we keep you for another go-around after the news?
Absolutely.
Okay, well, let's do it. I'd like to talk a little bit about MUFON and some of your other things you did. Our guest tonight is Shawn Kevin Jason, sharing some unbelievable experiences with us. He's a former MUFON field investigator and director of special projects. We're honored to have him on the show. We're going to take a break, and we'll be back in about 6 minutes. KTKK AM 630, and, of course, we're live on the Inception Radio Network. We'll be back with Shawn Jason in just a few. Our guest tonight is Shawn Kevin Jason. We'll get right back to Shawn here in a few minutes. We appreciate him being on the show tonight. I'd like to say good morning to all of our weeknight listeners. Fringe Radio is on Monday through Friday from midnight till 2 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. Of course, we're on Saturday nights from 6 till 8 p.m. I want to say good evening or good morning to all the people out there. If you're on the job working, doing whatever you're doing, be cautious and be careful out there. Again, we appreciate you tuning in. Our sponsors, Utah Go Green Carpet Cleaning. Utah Go Green Carpet Cleaning, they're our experts in the Host dry cleaning system. They take care of your fine Persian rugs, wool rugs, things that you don't want to wet down with water but want to get them nice and clean. And they're experts at using the Host dry cleaning system. They do encapsulation cleaning, shampooing, tile and grout cleaning, slate floor cleaning, upholstery, you name it, they do it. They are sponsors and good friends of the Fringe Radio Show and other hosts here at K-Talk. With spring coming up, you need to get things cleaned up for the year and want to feel fresh, have your house smell great. Give them a call at 801-808-3228, 808-3228, or visit them on the web at UtahGoGreenCarpetCleaning.com. Their new slogan is Utah Go Green Carpet Cleaning. We scrub it clean. The UFO store has been around for 13-plus years, and Randy has been a great supporter of Fringe Radio. He has all kinds of very unique periodicals and films, books, magazines, zine stuff from the 70s, 80s, before the days of the World Wide Web, old radio shows. He's just got a ton of stuff out there, and he supports the Fringe Radio Show. So please help support him. Go to the UFOstore.com. The Fringe Radio Show covers anything related to ghosts, paranormal, conspiracies, UFOs, alien abductions, UFO sightings, science fiction, Bigfoot, historical events, afterlife, near-death experiences, old horror movies, anything shrouded in just a little bit of mystery. We're also live on the Inception Radio Network. You can go to InceptionRadioNetwork.com and join the chat. If you have some questions for our guests tonight, post them on there, and we'll ask Shawn your questions. Again, we're honored to be a part of the Inception Radio Network. Jamie and Joe and the whole group do so much for us, and again, we appreciate their support. Our friend Travis Hill is a spiritual medium here in Salt Lake City. On March 28th at the Water Wellness Center in Salt Lake, he is going to host an event. The Wellness Center is on 9th East and 37th South. We'll have Travis on the show next week, and we'll have all the details of his event on our Facebook page and on our website. Our website's fallen a little bit behind this week. It's been a crazy week, and we apologize for that, but it is updated now, and the new guest schedules and everything will get loaded out there. If you want to look at our site, go to www.thefringeradioshow.com and take a look. You can follow us on Facebook and Twitter. If you have a story, experience, or a sighting, and you'd like to come on the show, go to the contact page, shoot us off an email, and we'll get back to you. The call-in number in Salt Lake City is 801-254-5855. That's 801-254-5855. A guest that we had on earlier this week, with much thanks to our friend Ryan up in the Northwest, who was able to get him on, is Grant Cameron. Grant Cameron's a ufologist that travels all over the country. He is based out of Canada. He was down at the UFO conference just a couple of weeks ago. He is going to be giving a talk and a lecture up at the Day Riverside Library at 1575 West, 1000 North in Salt Lake City. If you want to partake in the event, it will be on March 30th from 1:30 till 3:30 p.m. Grant was an excellent guest, covered a lot of different subjects. He's got a new book that just came out. He'll have his books there. You can sign a copy and go up there and support Grant. Our guest tonight is Shawn Kevin Jason. He's a former MUFON field investigator and director of special projects. He's been researching UFO phenomena for nearly 20 years. In addition, he was a contributing writer for the Colorado MUFON Journal. As a researcher and experiencer, he's had his own UFO encounter story published in Kim Carlsberg's latest book, The Art of Close Encounters. Shawn, again, we're honored to have you on K-Talk and Fringe Radio. Thank you so much for giving up your morning and being here, and more so sharing your personal stories.
Well, thank you, Pat, for giving me a chance to speak on your show.
So you were before the NBC break. You were starting to talk about something. You want to back up just maybe a half a minute, and then we'll move forward with what you started discussing.
Give me a refresher if you could.
Well, we talked about the theater. I'm sorry, we talked about going to see dinosaurs with your kids.
That's correct.
And then we talked about, you were going to mention, we were going to talk a little bit about MUFON, but before we get into that, you've had some other things happen where you've seen some futuristic sightings, I believe you called it, or futuristic maybe premonitions and poltergeists, and also you had the opportunity, I don't know if it's an opportunity or not, but to live in a place that was possibly had a lot of paranormal activity going on in it.
Well, as far as the idea of precognition goes, it typically has always dealt with things specifically dealing with my future. I'm not necessarily like predicting world events or anything like that. It's always been small and dealing directly with my own life. The only exception to that was my daughter, who I have a very close relationship with, so I was a tad bit probably overprotective of her when she was younger, so sometimes I would see her future events as well. In those situations, there are type of things that really make you question reality or what our understanding of reality is. According to Einstein, or the theory of relativity, that everything is happening right now, the past, the present, future, all exist at the same time. And from my experience with precognition, I kind of go along those lines that precognition is basically accessing future memories of events before they happen, although technically, since everything happens all at once, the future event has already taken place now. An example of that might be some of my daughter's examples, where one situation was when she was very young, when she started to walk, we lived in the house, it had a very steep and narrow staircase. And at the base of the staircase was a stone fireplace, and my biggest fear was of her falling down the stairs and, of course, hitting the fireplace or, getting seriously injured by that staircase. So when she started to walk, I always go out of my way, if I was home, to stop whatever I was doing and follow her either up or down the stairs to make sure she didn't fall. And if she did fall, I was there to catch her, until I felt confident enough that she knew how to navigate those stairs like a pro. And eventually she did. She never fell once during all those times I, followed her up and down the stairs. And one day, just randomly, I'm working on my computer, and I'm overtaken with the strong sensation that my daughter's going to fall down the staircase. So immediately I stop what I'm doing. I run to the stairs, and there she is climbing up the staircase. So slowly I follow behind her as she goes up. I'm not going to pick her up or take her to the top because I'll let her do her own thing, and if she falls, I'm there to catch her. Well, she pretty much gets to the top of the staircase, and I'm puzzled at this point because I'm like, well, my precognition was wrong, which has never happened before, because it's always been, when I see it, it happens, period. There's no change in it. And I'm just puzzled, and I'm thinking about that, and I totally lost sight of my daughter. And next thing you know, my wife starts yelling at me, and she's just yelling a bunch of gibberish I don't understand. I look over, but I see her pointing at the top of the staircase, and I'm like, what is she rambling about? I turn around and look up the staircase, and here comes my daughter rolling down the stairs towards me. So I had just enough time to put my arms down and catch her in my arms as I'm, standing there waiting for her to fall.
That's unbelievable.
Now, after the situation, from my understanding and the way it kind of works, is it happened more along the ways of, I had previously followed my daughter up and down the staircase all the time. She became quite used to it, but then I stopped. And she became quite used to me not following her up and down the staircase, to where, it was just her doing her own thing. Until one day, of course, that day, I get some premonition that she's going to fall down the stairs. So I followed her up the stairs. I think what happened was when I got halfway up the stairs and I kind of became dazed and confused on why she hasn't fell down, she probably got to the top of the staircase and was wondering why I stopped following her. And in an attempt to see what I was doing, she probably lost her balance and fell down the stairs and, of course, right into my arms. Now, there was another situation with my daughter that happened something like that, to where she had her hand slammed in the car door. We had went to visit some friends out in the countryside that used to be former neighbors, going out to say hi and see how they're doing. and I was outside having a cigarette, and my daughter was inside, and I was overtaken with an image that my daughter is about to have her hands slammed in the car door. And, of course, any father doesn't want that to happen to his daughter, and, I was going to do anything and everything I could to stop that vision, to prevent this future vision I had from happening, because I don't want my daughter to get hurt. A few minutes later, my daughter comes outside, and I didn't really think anything of it. The car was, it was a very long driveway. The car was way at the end. So I just let her do her own thing. My son had to run out to the car to get some things out of the car. So he ran out to the car. He's getting in the car. He's doing his thing. He's kind of goofing off. My daughter, curious about what he's doing, starts running out to the car. And I'm like, okay, wait a minute. She's running to the car. That's not, this is not going to jive with me. So I start yelling at my son, close the car doors. And my son was too far away. He couldn't hear me. What, Dad? What? And I would repeat myself, close the car doors. I had to repeat myself several times, and each time he could not hear me or understand me. I watched as my daughter comes around the side of the car, comes around the back, and comes up behind her brother, and is about to jump into the car when, at that very moment, my son finally understood me. Oh, you want me to shut the car door? Not even realizing his sister is right behind him, he slams the car door shut right on her hands.
Wow.
So, in that situation, my vision of the future actually caused the event to happen. And it kind of gives meaning to that phrase, prophecy is self-fulfilling in this case. My having that vision of her getting her hand slammed in the car door actually caused it to happen.
Wow.
By trying to prevent it.
Hey, Shawn, you want to take a call?
Sure.
Okay, hold on. Caller, good evening. Welcome to K-Talk Radio. You're on with Shawn Jason.
Oh, good morning.
Good morning.
Hey, Shawn. Hey, this is Robert.
Good morning, Robert.
Hey, listen, this is absolutely uncanny. Basically, you have pretty much said everything that has happened to me. These things started happening to me when I was like 12 years old and hasn't stopped. I'm 44 now. I've had UFO encounters every year since I was 12. Lived in haunted houses, just like you're talking about. Let's see, what else? I've had precognition. I've had the lucid dreams. And this all began when I was 12 years old when my grandmother died, and I spent basically 3 nights with her. Went to bed, had what wasn't a dream. This was absolutely real as reality is right now. Spent 3 nights just talking with her, spending time with her. It was absolutely no different than reality, and that absolutely shattered my conception of reality. And since then, things haven't been the same at all. I've had missing time. I've found myself, I've woke up in places that were absolutely ridiculous. Went to bed in one place, woke up later on somewhere completely, absolutely different. I've had close encounters that continue to this day. Just wanted to call in to say that I'm just absolutely shocked that I'm hearing somebody talk about basically the same things that have happened to me.
Well, thank you, Robert. It certainly sounds like you share a lot of experiences. Obviously, this is probably something a lot of people deal with, and it's not something necessarily we all care to talk about, considering the kind of stigma this topic usually gets, but certainly thank you for your call.
Do you feel, Robert, that that possibly you're or are you like with Shawn, he's not quite sure, but do you believe that you could be a contactee or an abductee?
Well, I have suspicions of being an abductee. I don't have any conscious memories of being abducted, but I have encountered crafts that obviously were not manufactured here. Missing time, waking up, somewhere else, with no memories of what took place during missing time.
No physical evidence or anything either?
Well, the only physical evidence that I could speak of is one event. I woke up in a place that was absolutely not where I was, when the event occurred. And what was bizarre about it is that my clothes were on, like my shirt was buttoned up incorrectly, crooked. Shoes were on the wrong feet, stuff like that. Very, very strange, very, traumatic, actually.
Actually, what you described there is actually quite common among abductees.
Right.
They report having their clothes being put on wrong when they get back. So that's not all that uncommon.
Have you ever thought about trying some, regression therapy, Robert, with anybody to kind of take you back into it, or are you? I don't know. I guess, be honest, are you afraid to do it? That's the thing that, I talk to so many people that talk about going through regression therapy, but maybe some of us don't want to do that, or it's scary enough. No,
I'd like to get to the bottom of this. I would love to do regressive hypnosis. The events that happened to me were very much real. I'm not trying to, make up stories so I can write a book or anything like that. I'd like to get to the bottom of this. I've, seen things that were absolutely just bizarre. Like, I lived in a house that, for all intents and purposes, was haunted, I guess. But I don't know. I'm so confused with the events that have taken place that I'm not sure if it was interdimensional, ghosts. I don't know. I've seen three-dimensional shadow figures, not like a shadow on the wall, but a three-dimensional shadow figure in the room. Things like that. Objects moving, in the house on their own. Just absolutely bizarre. Yeah, I would love to do that. I just want to know what this is all about and get to the bottom of it.
Well, there's a lot of people. Shawn, he can contact MUFON, can he? People like John Ventry, or, there's quite a few people. Do you think MUFON would be a good place to start, or would he be better off going, Robert, have you ever heard of somebody by the name of Melinda Leslie?
No.
She's, or even Kathleen Martin, who is the niece of Betty Hill, of the Betty and Barney Hill fame.
Right.
Maybe contact one of them and see what they say.
Well, most certainly with MUFON, at least, if you have a UFO encounter, you should always at least report your sighting and maybe go from there. But if you do have any sightings, you should always at least do that.
Well, I have filed with MUFON, and I have talked to the state director from MUFON. Okay. I need to, continue pursuing that. Maybe that will lead to something. I'm not sure.
Yeah, most certainly.
Excuse me.
I'm sorry. I said most certainly touch base with your local investigators and see what type of resources they also have access to, and see if they can offer any help.
Are these events still taking place with you, Shawn?
They've slowed down later on in my life. Not quite as frequent. The last sighting I had of UFO was about 2 years ago, and that was probably the most recent event. It certainly happened a lot more often in my younger years.
Right. Yeah, that seems to be the same kind of experience with myself. My latest one was in 2010.
Okay, so that wasn't too far from mine then. It's about the same time frame.
Robert, you said they started at about age 12 for you?
Yes.
And have been pretty consistent through most of your adult life.
Right, yeah. Yeah, I'm 44 right now, and it began when I was 12. And it's really random. I couldn't give you a number per year. but it's at least 1 to 2, sometimes 3 per year. And every year I have some kind of experience that would be considered, paranormal, ghost type, experiences.
Yeah, that's very very interesting. Well, like Jason said, maybe start. Well, you've already gone to MUFON, but go to Kathleen Marden's site and shoot her off an email. She is. Where are you located at, Robert?
Well, I'm located in the state of West Virginia.
Okay, because she's in, I believe, Florida. And,
Florida. Okay.
Yeah, her book is, I think it's called Abducted, and it's about it's a detailed book about the Betty and Barney Hill case. But I know she works with a few abductee specialists, and just go to her website and shoot her off an email, and they'll get back to you. We've had Kathleen on the show, and her I can't remember. She had another friend, partner that's helped her out quite a bit that we had on the show too. But Kathleen would be, I think, a really, really good starting point.
Oh, okay. I'll pursue that.
All righty.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
Hey, thanks for calling in, Robert.
No problem. Thank you, Robert.
All right. See you,
Thank
Sean.
you. Sean, we got another call. Let's go ahead and take another one. Caller, good evening. Welcome to K-Talk Radio. You're on with Sean.
Hey, this is Ryan here up in Puget Sound.
Hey, how are you, Ryan?
Hang in there. Your show is the best show overnight on AM, period. And I hope you give Coast to Coast AM a run for their money. I really do.
Well, thank you. You're too kind, my friend.
It's just a matter of getting all those listeners to come over here.
We'll get them here one at a time.
Well, hopefully you continue. Hopefully you take off. I'm really switching. I made the switch. It was interesting. Today I had, and thanks for coming on, Sean.
Oh, thank you.
My question for you guys is, what do you think when you have, oh God, now I lost the term of it. When you have something that happens and it feels like you've been there before.
Deja vu?
Deja vu. I had that occur just right before the show started. And I've had that happen to me multiple times in my lifetime. What do you guys think about what deja vu is? It's very strange. I felt like before the show today, I felt like, that's weird. I feel like I've seen that before. What do you guys think? What is deja vu?
What do you think, Sean?
Well, the kind of way I look at it is kind of the same way I look at precognition. If we look at reality as everything is happening right now, the future is right now, the past is right now, and time is not as linear as we like to think it is, then deja vu could typically be some type of future memory or experience that just stuck out in your head. It could be something little, it could be something big, but you recalled it at a previous time prior to it happening, so when it does happen, you feel like you've already done it before, and in fact, you already have done it before.
See, like for me, I don't know about you, Ryan or Sean. What happens to me from time to time, and I guess I will call it deja vu, but the periods of the event are so short. It's just the way I look at something, or I'm in a circumstance where I look at something. I mean, I could be anywhere, whether it's out driving in the car, or in the house, or whatever, or at a store, or here in the studio. It doesn't happen to me often, but it's just the way I look at something or see something, and it's there and it's gone in an instant. But it's like I've seen this before, and I've looked at this a certain way, and when you see that, you know it's how do I describe it? It's just for that instant you've looked at it just that you've seen that somewhere else exactly the same, but in my case, it's only for a couple of seconds, and then it's gone.
Right.
Yeah, and I would say my situation isn't much different than that.
Sean, Shawn,
it
you
could be
write
also
for
dreams.
Oh, sorry to interrupt you.
No, go ahead, Ryan.
You write for Tucson UFO Examiner, right?
Yes, that's correct. For Examiner.
So you've got articles up there on Tucson UFO Examiner. Yeah, I've read them a few times. I've checked them out.
If you just go to examiner.com and search my name, you should pull up my profile or the various articles I've read thus far.
So, have you ever tried remote viewing? I mean, I personally believe this stuff is real. There's something to dreams that people are able to, if you write it down, or do you ever write down your dreams so that?
I used to keep a dream journal and keep track of my dreams, and I have done remote viewing. I have actually got some training in remote viewing, but I can't really go the manner in which I was trained. I had to sign a non-disclosure agreement, so I can't really talk about the training. But I can tell you that indeed I was trained on remote viewing, and indeed it is real. The way I was trained in using it was basically remote viewing sick people or people with illness and identifying anything that was wrong with them. It was quite accurate when I used it. It was the same for a lot of other people that used it. But I most certainly believe in it. Yes.
All right. Well, that's all I have for tonight, Pat. And I challenge anybody out there, if they've never called in or listening, pick up the phone and call in. It's really easy to get through, and Pat doesn't bite. So anyway.
Well, thank you for calling in.
Hey.
Thanks, Ryan.
Okay, you guys take care.
Hey, and thanks for that hookup with Grant.
No problem.
Yeah, he's going to do the event here in Salt Lake, and it's going to be kind of neat to get up there.
Well, I've talked to Grant a few times. He's just a really great guy to talk to, so he's really down to earth. But all your guests.
Yeah, ironically, he'll be here in Tucson this Saturday. I'm already planning on going to see him speak.
Speaking of Tucson, has there been any? I mean, Arizona continues to be a hot spot. It didn't just happen at the Phoenix Lights. Has there been anything going on down there as far as like on the UFO side of things? And I'll just get off line and listen. Thanks.
This is Arizona. There's always a UFO being seen here. It seems like, be it Tucson or Phoenix, this is certainly a hotbed for UFO activity. You'd say we're probably above average as far as our share of sightings.
Well, have you ever experienced? I've interviewed a few people that in the Sedona area that talk about these the Sedona, the vortexes, or the Sedona vortex. Have you had an opportunity to get up that way? And I know that Grant had just, I believe it was him and his son, just spent some time with Kim, and went out with all her equipment, and he said it was just amazing what they saw up in the sky. It was, he said, if anybody doesn't believe in unidentified flying objects, go down there and put some of those night vision goggles on and lay back on a truck and look up in the sky, and it'll make you a believer pretty quick.
Well, Sedona has certainly been on my to-do list. Of course, Kim is there, and there's quite a few other people in the area that I know or Facebook friends with. And, certainly would like to make a trip up there and check out the vortex area, as well as they have with the UFO cafe up there as well. So it's certainly going to stop there for a bite to eat. But one of these days, I'll make it up there.
Did you have an opportunity, Shawn, to get down to or go to the UFO conference this year?
No, I'm afraid I didn't. I would have liked to, but sorry I couldn't make it this year.
Yeah, it was. We were actually going to do the show live there, and my daughter ended up having some things going around, and we just could not depart town no matter what. But next year, I am definitely planning on going. Let's talk just MUFON for a little bit, if it's okay. With you,
sure.
How long were you involved with MUFON?
Just a few years. I got involved pretty much right when Schuessler took over from Walt, and we had the old UFO museum in Denver, the headquarters at that time. So I worked directly under Schuessler and with a lot of the other people who were on the Colorado board at that time. So I kind of got to see the inner workings of MUFON and whatnot. It was kind of heyday for MUFON when it was no longer under wall to be at a museum. It was kind of going along pretty well, but eventually, money runs out. There's not a lot of money in this field, and people typically don't donate. So it wasn't too long before John was forced to close the doors because most of the money was coming out of his own pocket to pay to keep open and to give us a place for our meetings and whatnot. This was actually where I first met Stan Romanek, when Stan first entered the picture and started attending MUFON meetings. And some of those people came from that time frame. So this was several years ago, but that's when I was involved with it. Ken Storch was another one. Chuck Sikowski, or the UFO Nut. There was quite a few personalities around at that time.
Yeah, I believe it's a worthwhile organization. Everybody that I have interviewed on the show or talk with, guys like John Ventry and just all of them from the Susan Swiatek, Sam Moranto up in Chicago, where I'm from. And like yourself, even though you're not part of it anymore, just more than willing to come on and share their experiences and talk about it. I think it's a good organization. I know things have changed a little bit, but and I'm sure with the advent of the internet too, it's lost a little bit of its strength to some degree because there's so many online reporting things that you can have or that are out there now that allow us to do research. Before the internet, the pens and pencil and paper day, was tracked a little different. I've got to take one last break, Shawn. We'll keep you here for one more segment.
Sounds good.
Okay. Our guest tonight is Shawn Kevin Jason. He's a former MUFON field investigator and director of special projects. We're going to talk about some of the stuff that he writes for. Again, we're honored to have him on the show, and he's sharing some pretty detailed experiences. KTKK AM 630 here in Salt Lake City. Of course, we're live on Inception. We'll be back in just a few. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Fringe Radio Show. My favorite UFO, the Jupiter 2, Shawn. I'm an aficionado of old science fiction programs and movies and horror stuff. I think that's where I got my start when I was young.
No, they certainly had a lot of classics back then. I love all of them. The Earth versus the Flying Saucers. That must be one of my favorites.
Yeah, I love the old science fiction, the old B grade stuff, or B movies, I guess, as they call them today. Some of the stories are, I guess that was acting at its best back then. There was simple sets and spaceships flying on strings, and it was just amazing what they did with before the days of Photoshop and all those other fun things. Now, you sent me a handful of links. You write at Examiner.com. That's the Tucson UFO Examiner. Is that something you keep up to date with pretty much?
Yeah, I tend to write articles on a regular basis, maybe not as much as I would like to. Right now I'm working on my first book, so I haven't been able to focus too much on writing for the Examiner, but I still put some articles out there. I also manage a few fan pages on Facebook, one including for the Chasing UFOs TV series that was on National Geographic, along with a few other pages.
Gotcha. Matter of fact, I put in a request to Erin Ryder to come on the show, and her publicist or agent, whatever, got back to me tonight, right before I was heading here to the studio to do the interview with you. Maybe a little psychic ESP there, so she sent me a questionnaire, and I think Erin's pretty cool, and hopefully we can get her on the show down the road a little bit.
Absolutely, I'm sure that would be a great show.
And then Black Triangle Disclosure, that's another one of your Facebook pages?
Yeah, and that's probably been the primary focus of my experience and my research is black triangles seem to be my focus. Of course, I would like to see some type of disclosure for these aircraft. If indeed, like I suspect, they're man-made, then we really need to, essentially remove these from the picture. Too many people are still confusing them with potentially extraterrestrial vehicles when everything seems to be pointing at some type of terrestrial manufacturer, whether it's the military, whether it's some private interest. We don't know those answers yet, but certainly I think if we can get these things disclosed, it would change a lot.
Well, without a doubt. Well, with all your time, I guess the one question I haven't asked you yet is, with your work with MUFON and all the work you've done, have you actually seen a UFO yourself? I mean, you believe that these black triangles are of this world or of this earth. Have you had the opportunity to see UFOs that aren't from here?
Well, I mean, typically when I see a UFO, aside from the black triangle, which was, like I said, within 20 feet, it's usually off in the distance. You see something that's obviously solid, it's flying in the air, it's some kind of technology, some kind of flying machine. But other than that, you really can't definitively say, yes, it was alien or yes, it was man-made. Simply there's not enough detail or information to, make that type of judgment. I've seen everything from a little silver type of ball UFO following a C-130 on its final approach to Nellis Air Force Base to a group of black discs kind of revolving around one another as they're flying over the city of Tucson heading towards the Air Force Base. You can make some assumptions that, it was alien or it was man-made, but really it was just a UFO.
Right. Well, and the one thing I found interesting, which I posted on the Fringe Radio on our Facebook page, is the photo you had that was actually the Goodyear blimp. Again, when it was taken at a long distance, it appeared to be a saucer, but yet up close, when you got a good look at it, it really it wasn't a UFO at all. It was an airship.
And more often than not, when people report a UFO, it's simply a misidentified object with a rational explanation. But indeed, there are aircraft flying around our skies that defy all rational explanation and certainly deserve more work and more investigation into this matter.
Well, yeah. Now, do you work with the Chasing UFOs team? Are you part of that team, or do you just support their fan pages, or do you actually work with the group?
I just support the fan page. I kind of just lucked out with that, but I do talk at times, sometimes with the show. So,
because one thing I hope the show is going to continue to stay on the air, because what I did find interesting. Well, I have a lot of respect for James Fox. I know he's been very, very busy working on a lot of different projects. Actually, we had him scheduled to come on the show, and he ended up getting himself in a place last year where he just had no cell phone reception. He was out doing some filming, and he wasn't able to come on. We're hoping to get him on maybe later this year. But what I do like about that show is it's not these reality shows some of them are just a little bit too over the top. I did like the show. I don't know how closely you follow it, but I did like the show where basically the camera crew went out there and this gentleman was claiming he was seeing all these orange orbs flying, and when they really dug into it, it turned out to be these Chinese lanterns that somebody was launching. And it is good to see that, call it what you want. It's a documentary, but it still has the reality flavor to it. But at least they're doing some real scientific work, and to me that kind of set the bar up a little bit more than Ghost Adventures. I think is fun to watch, but all the oohs, ahs, and go to commercial and pick back up. I mean, after a while, it just gets a little bit tiring.
Yeah, and actually, I'm sad to say the show was canceled. Aaron had made the announcement last January that they wouldn't be returning for a second season unless they can find another network that would pick it up.
Okay. Are they working on any other projects? Or because again, I thought it was a good show. I know it is kind of disheartening. I think the market is just flooded with so many of these different types of shows. But I think of all the ones that I've seen, it was one of the better ones.
I can't say. I don't know if they're working on anything. The only thing I'm familiar with is Fox, who was offering up that money for any proof of UFOs. I think he made that announcement just last month. But as far as chasing UFOs, no.
Yeah, because again, I thought it was a good show. In my lifetime, I've seen 2 UFOs. One when I at 98 here in Salt Lake, flying over the Oquirrh Mountains, which is on the west side of the valley. I'm going to call it a UFO because I've never seen an aircraft of that size and magnitude before. But then again, as much as I want to believe it's from another world full of other people or other creatures, I don't question what I saw. I know what I saw. I would do anything to have a camera and to have captured what I saw. But then again, Area 51 is not that far from where we are. And as a lot of people say, Dugway is right here on the other side. And I sometimes have heard that the stuff at Dugway would probably blow Area 51 away if you were to see what's out there. So we are out in a very mystical area, whether it's out of this world or of this world. There's a lot of projects and testing and things going on out here.
Well, most certainly, and as I recall during the 90s, it was probably the late 90s when they started talking about Area 51 is no longer Area 51 and everything was moved over to, if I'm not mistaken, Utah.
Right.
And Utah was essentially the new Area 51.
Yeah, because there's a couple of runways out there. I have not taken cameras out there or anything, but I've had the opportunity to go out to I guess what we'll call the gate of Dugway. And when you get out that way and you see the size of the runways that are out there, well, there's one runway in particular that's just miles and miles long. And I don't know what they are flying in or out of there, but the runway is absolutely massive. I mean, you could land several 747s at the same time on it. So I don't quite know what they're doing there, but if that is built for a specific craft, it's got to just be of a magnitude that nobody can get their arms around.
Oh, absolutely, and we can only begin to guess or imagine just what type of aircraft they have, especially when you start getting into some of these advanced stealth aircraft that supposedly exist.
Oh, yeah. Well, again, what I saw here, what I saw in 98, all I could tell you is, and I wasn't partaking in no alcohol or anything like that, was the size of a couple of what appeared, I should say. I know when the mind can play a lot of tricks and your eyes can play tricks, and when things are seen at night, they can look quite different. But at least from what I saw, I would say that it was the size of a couple of aircraft carriers. It was just absolutely the most immense object I have ever seen that was absolutely silent. I don't know what kind of propulsion it was using, but whatever it was using, it made absolutely no noise. When I saw it pass, it came from the south end of the valley, went to the north end of the valley, which is about 20 or 30 miles, veered off to the northwest. I would figure that anything conventional would emit a shock wave of some sort that would, literally take the houses down. But it was just dead silence, and moved across the sky, across the top of the mountains, and then took off. And but again, I have no photos to prove it. I just, as James says, I do know what I saw, though.
Well, certainly a lot of people have reported UFOs of that size, probably about the size of a football field or bigger. So certainly they're being seen. In fact, the Phoenix Lights was one such example where the UFO was just absolutely gigantic, and it just seemed to go from horizon to horizon for some people.
Exactly. I've got to wrap up, Shawn. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you coming on the show tonight and sharing your experiences. And I would hope that we could stay in touch and down the road as you have different things you write about and different experiences that we could have you back on again.
Oh, absolutely. I've certainly barely touched on some of my personal stories, so there's always different avenues I can go down.
Now, you've got a book you said you're putting together right now?
Yeah, I'm working on my first book. Going to be a UFO book. I don't really have a title yet for it. The working title is Becoming Alien Invasion.
Very interesting. Well, we will stay in touch, and again, later in the year, I'd love to have you back on, revisit, and just talk about some more things.
Sounds good.
Okay, our guest tonight, Shawn Kevin Jason. Check out his Facebook pages. The Chasing UFOs, Tucson UFO Examiner, and of course Black Triangle Disclosure. Hey, thank you so much for giving up your morning, and we'll stay in touch. And again, we're honored to have you on. Thank you so much for being here.
All right, thank you, Pat, and you have a nice evening.
All right, you too. Good night now.
Good night.
All right, well, a great show. That was without a doubt very interesting. A lot of personal, intimate details there about what he's gone through, and sounds like other people have had the same things. Be afraid to call in and talk. It's again, that's what Fringe Radio is all about. It's about being open-minded and talking about anything, and there's no hidden agendas. Nobody's going to tear anybody down. Skeptics and debunkers can feel and say what they want. They want to call in and voice their opinion. Hey, that's fine. That's what we're here for. It's a free country. It's an independent radio station, and that's what we're all about. But if you have a story and you'd like to come on the show, email us, and we'll get you on. Or if you've got something that you just would like to email in, and keep it anonymous. And when we have people like Shawn on the show, we'll go through the emails and share them with them. Again, there's organizations like MUFON and Kathleen Martin and a lot of different people out there, Melinda Leslie, a lot of good researchers and people that can help you out if you feel that something has happened. Tomorrow night, we've got radio talk show host, Jim Harold. Sorry, lost it for a second there. Jim Harold will be on. He runs a radio show, just a lot of interesting things, UFOs, paranormal, what have you. I love talking to other radio hosts. Saturday night, a great show. Phoenix Lights, Dr. Lynn Katai. We've been trying to get her on for over a year. She'll be on. And then next week starts a whole new group of guests. So I want to say goodnight to everybody. Thank you for appreciate the good comments. We got a lot of great emails. Thank you for all listening. We'll keep doing the best we can. AM 630, KTKK, Salt Lake City. Jim Sumner's up after NBC News, and we will be back tomorrow night with Jim Harold at midnight. Good night, everybody.